Hello, everybody. I'm Nasira, the energy architect, and today we have with us Akhil Saxena. Hi, Akhil. Welcome to the Energy Architect podcast.
Hi, Nasira, and thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, thank you, Akhil, because I know how busy you are and you've made the time to do this. But I
Not
couldn't
at
think
all.
of I couldn't think of anybody else who would really so beautifully fit into the leadership series that the Energy Architect is just coming out with. And I'll let for people who don't know you, I'll just give a very small introduction. So in this episode of Leaders by Design, where energy meets leadership, we are thrilled to welcome Akhil Saxena, an accomplished global leader with over 3 decades of experience across Amazon, Unilever, and RPG Enterprises. As the former Vice President of Customer Fulfillment Operations for APAC, MENA, LATAM, and Worldwide Customer Service at Amazon, Akhil has led transformative growth in emerging markets and built high-performing teams across regions globally. Beyond his vast operational experience, Akhil is deeply passionate about nurturing future leaders and empowering senior women in logistics and supply chain. Now, transitioning into his role as an executive coach, Akhil dedicates his energy to mentoring leaders and solving complex supply chain challenges. His leadership journey is a testament to purpose driven growth, and today we dive into his insights on leadership, mentorship, and energy that he brings to every aspect of his work. Now, knowing Akhil uh, personally a little well, I would have to say that he is one of the most humble and authentic leaders that I have met. So, Akhil, more power to you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to understand, everything about how you show up and how you make these ripples of change everywhere you go. Now, energy plays a vital role in leadership, both in how we manage our own energy and how we influence others. So, how do you consciously manage your own energy to show at, your best self for your teams and the organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, the couple of things that play for me. One is being self-aware of how I'm feeling, and I think with my journey as a coach, I think I'm become more sensitive to and more aware of my own feelings and my own emotions, and therefore knowing how I'm feeling, whether I'm excited, whether I'm like, I'm like not in the best of my spirits. I think that self awareness is very important. And once I'm aware of it, I can take care of it. Right? So that's one piece. The second one is, I would say, is taking self care. So there are things that I would do to manage myself and manage my emotions, manage my energy. So I walk a lot. So people go to the gym, people have their different things. For me, walking is important. I do about 10 kilometers a day of walking. I also have a small, tiny garden in my balcony. So I do some amount of weeding, de-weeding, and all of those pieces, which allow me to calm down and become stress-free. Also, reflections is something that are very important for me, and I do spend time on personal reflection. I have a meditative practice, not very regular, but yes, once in a while I do meditation. And I think that's something that is my personal goal to work upon and make it more consistent for myself. The other piece that I would say here is always a positive mindset. And I think I was very greatly influenced by a program by Shirzad Sharmin, who talked about positive intelligence. And one of the things he said is every opportunity or any adversity has three gifts: the gift of knowledge, the gift of power, and the gift of inspiration. And I think I resonate with that very strongly. And that's been my mantra. Therefore, always looking at the positive side of things, there will be things which will not be exciting for us, and many things happen to us in our lives. But how do you look at the positive side? How do you look at the three gifts of knowledge, power, and inspiration? And I think that keeps me very grounded, and that keeps me much more uh, centered, is what I would say.
I have to agree with that. You're extremely centered. I have seen beautiful pictures that you post on LinkedIn and like on the group where you share pictures that inspire you, which really inspire everyone who actually come in contact with you. And there's one more thing that I know about you, and that you are super organized. How do you do this?
uh,
Because you have a lot
I think
going on. You have a very hectic schedule. You're extremely busy, yet you're still like, on the point. So how do you manage to do that?
I think it comes from a family upbringing. My father was in defense, so everything was very disciplined in terms of timing. When we breakfast would be there, the lights would go out when we were kids to say, now it is time for bed. I think time became very important as a friend. I think many times people get challenged on managing time. I think I focus on managing the activities in the finite time that we all have, right? So you and I have the same 24 hours, but instead of managing time, I think I focus a lot on managing activities to say if I have to do these things, how do I manage them rather than just managing the time part of it. So for me, it's more of like how I've grown up with being precise, being respectful of not just my own time, but of other people's time. And that then allows this whole beautiful synergy between how we manage our time together, right? And I think that's very critical for me. And because there is an element of time and I'm not chasing time all the time, therefore, there is opportunity for me to structure how I use that time and what do I invest it on. That makes it a little more organized. But yeah, sometimes I can be a little over the top on these things as well.
Oh no, never. Because actually, what you put out is something I think that you really do get back as well. When you say that you really respect other people's time, I have seen that. I completely believe that. And I see how that really comes back to you. And that's the one thing that I've noticed about you, that you have done a lot of work in your life, some fantastic work. And how how humble you are, how grounded you are, when you put yourself out there. Um, how where does that humility come from? Where was that? Like, what's the source of that energy?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if there is a specific time that I would say or an event in my life that I would say that that is where it has come from. But I think it's coming from that place of being very comfortable with the acknowledgement that I will never have all the answers. Never. I will have some of the answers, maybe most of the answers, maybe none of the answers, but never have all the answers. And the moment you become comfortable with that, and I think for me, it's been that space of being comfortable saying, I don't think I will have all the answers at any point of time. And the moment you embrace that, you realize that, look, there are people other than you who will have better answers, who will have more experience, who will have better insights, and that grounds you. I mean, then you are not sitting on a pedestal saying, I know it all. You are basically completely mellowed down and said, there are other people who know this better. And I think there was this analogy that one of my mentors very early in my career, I was very fortunate to have a lot of mentors, which is also the reason why I give back in terms of the form of mentoring over the last 15 years or so. He said that, Akhil, you should always be like the sponge, very soft, malleable, can be twisted into any shape, rolled into a ball, squeezed. But you should be like that sponge which drops into the bucket of water. But when it comes out, it is dripping with water. You should be like that sponge which is dripping with knowledge because you're so humble that you can absorb and you're not having any barriers to absorption of knowledge. And I think that metaphor for me stuck very vividly in my head to say, what's the harm if you decide to tell people, I don't know? There's a better chance you will learn versus, oh, I think I know it. And therefore you miss the opportunity of learning from other people. I'll tell you an example how also it plays out into real life world, right? So I was about 15 years into my career in Unilever, and I'd moved to a corporate role, and I was leading a large transformation project for Unilever in India. And I thought, with my experience, I knew the answer to a large part of the transformation, and I was pushing the team in a certain direction. And I was encouraging them to go forward and telling them this is what will work based on my experience, and we continue to march down that path. But I realized that it was not giving us the results that we were looking for, and I think the team was also getting very frustrated in the process. And then I looked back and stepped back and said, "What's happening here?" And I realized that I hadn't been very open to other people's perspectives and insights on how this problem could be solved. And I was basically, hey, this is my way, this is my experience. Therefore, I was trusting my gut and my experience more than what I would for people around me. So I made a very conscious choice, and I went back to the team and said, maybe I was wrong. And maybe let's just step back and see what's happening here. And invited the team to say, come in and start telling me what we could do differently. This, whatever we are doing so far, hasn't really worked for us. And it was a shift in the whole dynamics of the team to say, oh, the leader of this team is saying maybe he was wrong. And therefore, it opened up a lot of safe spaces for people to say, okay, we think we can give you some ideas. And that's how that started. And we had multiple ideas. The team felt very empowered. And we actually ended up with a new member, a solution. Somebody was new to the team. His solution is what we actually finally implemented. So when I think about that example, and what it taught me was how being humble and how being authentic allows people to collaborate, trust you, and it gives the team better outcomes. There was a better collective result that we had, a better performance. And I thought the team came in much closer. They were much more cohesive. So there was a better morale, and there was engagement, and people were like, okay, now we have a path, and it is our path, not Akhil's path. So the humility then comes in from a place of saying, maybe I was wrong, and be honest about it, to say, as I'm a human being, I'm not somebody who knows it all, and I could make mistakes.
Well, that's going to last with me for some time because, when you said your mentor gave you that line, I think I'm going to remember that because that's really very powerful.
Very powerful.
And
I found it very inspiring, actually.
yeah, I agree. And also your collaborative approach. When you bring that into an environment which is extremely competitive, that I think is such a game changer, as when a leader actually says, come on, let's do this together. It just changes everything, the entire dynamics of the team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And today's world is so different from what we have lived in the past, Nasira. Earlier, it was one line of hierarchy, one leader, everybody reporting into them, and therefore they were deciding what had to happen. In today's world, the organizations are all metrics. You have multiple reportings. There's a functional reporting, there's a direct reporting, there's an indirect reporting, dotted line, solid line. And therefore, in those organizations, you need collaboration. Collaboration becomes very important as a skill for a leader.
Mm.
Yeah, very true.
And also there is this a little bit of vulnerability that a lot of leaders are very afraid to display. Because I think there's so much of judgment that is associated with showing that you could be a little vulnerable. Yet you've used that to your advantage and as a strength.
I've always felt that asking for help and being vulnerable is a sign of greatness and not weakness. I remember in our history books in class 5, class 6, we were taught about Alexander the Great, right? He had conquered Macedonia, Persia had come in all the way from that part of the world to conquer India. And in that journey, he had to take the help of small chieftains and the villagers to cross the rivers, especially when they were in Spain, when we are talking about India, where he had to cross the rivers and he had to take help from the local people. And for me, that's an example of like how somebody like Alexander the Great would also be asking for help from somebody. Yeah, and it's an interesting metaphor. I don't know about the validity of the history of these stories, but they inspire you in some form to think very differently. So asking
Mm.
for help is like, I don't know it, and I might be a better person if I learn versus pretending that I know it all.
Mm.
So it
And
allows you to be more secure in your own thinking, because you are there, you're not holding a mask of knowing it all, right? So you don't spend any effort in holding up a mask saying, uh, I know or I am all powerful. You don't spend any effort. So there's the hands are free. You can go and learn and you can do things. There's no energy being spent on this whole charade of, okay, I'm in control. It gives you a lot of sense of peace, by the way, because then you are your authentic self. There's nothing to hide. No, you don't know when ask for help.
So were you always like this, or did you develop it over a period of time? Like
Um,
three
I,
decades back?
I think I was less of it in my early childhood. Or I remember when I was in college, I had only about 2 weeks before my joining and my first semester exams. I joined very late in my college when I was doing my engineering in Kashmir. So I joined in November, even though the session had started in August. But in those 2 weeks, there was a lot of people who came in and helped me. And I was like, I don't know what engineering drawing is all about. And that was one of the subjects that was the first time I was seeing what engineering drawing is, and all those orthographic designs and do your sectionals and submissions. You do some, I had to do some about 40 drawings. And I was like, I don't know how to do this in 2 weeks' time. There were a lot of people who helped me. And when I realized that, look, these people are going out of the way, then there's also a sense of responsibility to say you can't let them down because they invested their time on you. And then it becomes a very virtuous cycle because you got the help and therefore you benefited from it. You raise your own bar so that you are not letting anybody else down. And you also come in with this whole mental model to say, I also need to help somebody in my way of giving back. And I've realized that you can never give back the principle of what you receive. You always can only pay back the interest component of that help that you have received. And I think that's something that makes us all very grounded.
That's beautiful. And when you talk about raising the bar, I know that you have done quite a few impossible things. Would love to hear some of them. How is it that you managed to do that and get your teams, aligned to your energy?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been about challenging myself and challenging status quo, myself in my own personal journey and status quo in the work that I do. Uh, like, for example, I had a fear of heights. Um, so I've always been scared, even though as an engineer, I have climbed enough and more boiler chimneys and generator set chimneys to inspect them and all of that. But it was always with fear, right? You always had the fear of what, don't look down, I might fall. So you somehow closed your eyes, climbed up as much as you can, and then did what you had to do and come back quickly. So 3 years ago, I was in Australia, and I realized that look, there is an opportunity for me to walk the Sydney Harbour on top of the bridge. It was proper safety harness and all, but it was height, and there was water below, and there was moving traffic below the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And this is a good opportunity for me to challenge myself personally and get over my fear. Therefore, I took that walk, and when I did and I completed, I sent a picture of this to my family, and they were like, "How did you even think of doing it?" And I felt like, no, maybe this was my own personal battle that I had to overcome. And somewhere you dig into your own resolves of your great and determination, and then say, maybe I can do it, and you bring yourself to committing to that. Similarly, if I was to think about like teams, I've always felt that people have far more potential than we realize, and therefore, how do you inspire them and how do you challenge them, and they can create magic. I think I've always looked at it as an opportunity and a very blessed opportunity being in that role to get the support of the teams and see how they can create magic when we just create an environment of safety and uh, well-being and people feeling, oh, let me stretch myself and do something which is different. Building the Amazon India network itself was something that is one it's in a lifetime opportunity. And I've been very privileged and honored to have been here at a time when Amazon was launching in India, and we expanded the network and we built the network for transportation and warehousing. And what we created in the first 2 years was nothing short of magical. So challenging to say, how do you create something which takes typically a year and a half? How do you do it in 90 days? How do you do it in 120 days? And you might not meet 120 days, but people know that, look, this is way better than the 6 months or 12 months that it would take compressing the time. And therefore, acknowledging what people do, sharing their successes, and also sharing the learnings and applauding them for what they've contributed. I think it's become a very important part of my culture.
Wow. Really, the way you create impact, through your teams, you raising the bar. at so many levels. I cannot see anybody who cannot be working with you and not be inspired by that kind of uh, motivation.
And look, I'll be candid, right? There are different ways to inspire, and I think I've come to a place after many years of experience and graying hair to say inspiration doesn't necessarily mean a carrot of money, or it's not necessarily like, oh, you'll get promoted and therefore you inspire people. And simple things is what I've learned over time, and I'll tell you a couple of them. One is, how do you create a shared vision with a purpose, right? So when you have one vision and you spend time in articulating that vision and saying, this is why we are doing what we are doing, and people understand the why behind the what,
Yeah.
then there is more acceptance of it. So they know that they can rally around a very clear reason that they can resonate with, and they connect it with their sense of purpose or their sense of being. And when people feel that they're connected to a larger part, then they all want to shine and excel so that the larger part becomes much more beautiful. So people put in their best effort so that they're not like the spot in the large part, but they are the shining jewel in that large part. And when everybody does that, then you have like a crown of jewels is glowing, and that's what the teams are. So they become much more invested in the outcome. They're willing to push the boundaries, and they're able to take on a challenge in a much more positive outlook. Uh, and again, one of the things I've realized is when you talk about your own personal failures in a very open and candid manner, and talk about the learnings that you had, not focusing on the baggage of the failure, but focusing on the learning that you had, it just allows people to feel more human, and it allows people to feel that, look, they can also go and stretch themselves. And if there is something which goes wrong, then there is a safety net that they can fall back on. So this mental model of success is your, failure is mine, that if you keep practicing and demonstrating through your words and deeds, then becomes a very important feature of that collaborative teams working in the organization's culture.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Uh, I can see how you can get so many people to start believing that this is not the best. There's more to do. I can see how you do that, and you do that at an everyday basis. I now, even as an executive coach, you are inspiring people. You are taking all of this wealth of knowledge, your experience, and all of these beautiful virtues that you have, and you are now motivating people to lead as well. So how did you end up coaching?
It's a good, very good question. And uh, I'll tell you, I think, as I said, like I've been mentoring people for 15 plus years. I was very fortunate to have mentors and different kinds of mentors. So I had a network of mentors who would help me in different kinds of things in my career. I still have that network, and I can lean on them when I have doubts. Every time I've changed my job, and I only change it twice, three times now with this move out of Amazon, three times now. I've gone back to my mentors and said, this is how I'm thinking. This is the pros and cons I've evaluated. Help me pick holes in my thinking, guide me, suggest to me what might be different, and so on. So I've been very fortunate there. So I've been mentoring for many years. And in the process, I realized that, look, there is impact that can be created, but that impact was only in the area of my specialization or my knowledge, which is supply chain and operations. But there was more that I could do. And as I got talking about it, somebody who's an ex-colleague of mine from Unilever, he runs a coach training institute, and he said, why don't you become a coach? I was so naive that I did not know the difference between coaching and mentoring. And I said, oh, I'm already coaching people for the last 15 years. And he actually sat me down and said, no, this is not coaching. He heard me out, and then he said, oh, this is not coaching. And then he explained to me the difference between coaching and mentoring. And I was like, wow, this sounds very interesting and something that I want to explore more. So I enrolled in a coach training program and got trained as a coach. But the whole objective when I started off was I want to help people operate at their full potential and create impact for themselves and for people around them. That was my objective. But as I was going through my coaching journey, I realized that maybe my objective was completely wrong because I saw so much value in what was happening with me. My own leadership style started changing. I became much more aware. I became more aware of my emotions. There were times when I would not feel that I was in the best of my spirits to go and attend a critical meeting, and I would sometimes cancel the meeting because I realized that no, I would not do justice to the people who had worked for that meeting. So that self-awareness became larger. I became a better listener. I became more empowering, became more patient, and my team started seeing it. Now I got feedback to say, Akhil, whatever you are doing is working very well for you, and we feel very excited. And I'm like, oh wow. Now our own leadership styles don't change overnight, right? It takes many, many years. But here was something that was helping me to become a better version of myself. And I said, wow, this looks interesting. So I went ahead and did my level 2 coach training. And then I started coaching people internally at Amazon. And then sometime last year, I realized that I was not finding enough time to do this. So I decided that, look, this is time to hang up my boots as a corporate role, but go and do two things. One is follow my purpose and follow my passion. Purpose has always been people. And therefore, how do I become a better person myself, and how do I help other people to operate at their full potential and live a more meaningful life and make more impact in the organization and in the world? And passion has been supply chain. So that's what I do as a consultant in the area of supply chain. So that's been my journey. I think I saw personal value in being a coach and becoming a better version of myself. And that's where I just got reinforced even more, so that I could leave a very fulfilling, uh, no dissatisfiers kind of an organization. I was very happy with what I was doing at Amazon. If I didn't have this purpose in calling, I would have been there for another 10 years. Nothing which made me move out other than this calling to say, spend more time on what you really enjoy doing and what you see really believe in. So that's what I decided to do.
Yeah, I can see uh, you really glow when you say that my purpose. I can see how much that means to you. Akhil, there is one more thing that's always baffled me. Okay. The dynamics in a team is so volatile. There's so much of uncertainty. There are so many emotions running high. So on one point, you are creating this, emotional safety. Okay. But yes, I know that you can't like really change everybody in the system, in the teams. And when the energies are running so high, when egos are flying, when uncertainty is like hitting the roof, how is it that you are able to really hold your space there? Because I cannot see you as somebody ever flying off the handle. Maybe there is the side of you. I don't know.
There is a side of me. I think I've mellowed down over many years, but there is
Okay.
a side of me, to be very honest and candid, yes. But I've mellowed down with time. Um, I think when I've seen what my impact can be on the team, positive or negative, it has helped me to step back and be more self-aware of how I conduct myself. Number one, so it's more personal awareness and that realization that you have in the position or in the response roles that we are in our lives, we create impact and we have impact of people around us. Right? So you could completely fly off the handle and disrupt everything and disrupt the whole team, or you could hold yourself, hold the space, and be that person who the team can flourish under, right? Even if things are falling all around them. So for me, one piece that has always been is like with people, different egos, different personalities, different sometimes different reasons of why they are there in the room. Bringing everybody together to this whole common frame of what is the vision, why are we here, why are we doing what we are doing, it becomes very critical, right? When you have them aligned to one purpose. The other piece that has helped me is to help people see what is in it for them, and always it is about their personal growth. uh, they grow in terms of building more skills and competencies. They also contribute to the organization, so they create impact. They create impact for many generations going forward. Uh, and they have more ownership. They have much more accountability, and the focus moves from what they're not good at to what they're really good at. So you start focusing on strengths of people and therefore they feel more excited, more empowered, because strengths are come into play much more than what some of our opportunities are, right? So you focus your attention on strengths, and that's what then allows the team to say, okay, he's looking at the brighter side of me, or she's looking at the brighter side of me. Let me showcase that, and therefore they step out of their comfort zone. They're willing to challenge themselves. They're willing to do things that they've possibly not attempted in the past, knowing well that, look, if something happens, there is somebody who has my back. And therefore, being that leader who allows that space for people to experiment and fail if necessary and learn in the process, and hold the air cover, provide them the air cover to experiment and do all the tricks and the trades. I think that is something very important. Also celebrating wins and the progress that the team is making. So it's not always about just the end result, right? It's also about what is the challenge the team has encountered, how have they gone over it, what's the resilience that the team has shown, how each of them have done things differently to move the project forward. I think if you spend time on that, people realize that, look, it's not about task orientation, it's about what is happening with them. And therefore the rap was very different. And I'm a person of relationships, Nasira. So for me, relationships are important. While I will push my team a lot in the workspace, but I also know in the personal space what's happening. Whose son is now getting to play under 19 in the Indian cricket team, and so on. And therefore, there is an emotional connect that I have with the team, the most members of the team, especially the ones that I work very closely with, because it's not always just profession, right? There's also a human side to us. Once we leave our office, um, our badges are useless. The badge and the labels are not there. They don't work, do anything. You are just one human being like any other people, anyone else outside the office.
I have to agree with you because that is what I said, that humility that is there in you. It is so, I think is such a superpower that you have. And it makes you so authentic as a leader. So, Akhil, you are doing lots of programs right now, mentoring a lot of leaders and also women leaders. Would love to hear a little bit about what you're doing in that space.
So a couple of things here. In my time over the last 20 years or maybe even more, I've seen that the supply chain is a space where we don't find too many women leaders. And when I say supply chain, I'm including manufacturing, I'm including transportation, logistics, warehousing. All of those pieces are elements of the supply chain. And I've always felt that, look, there has been a bias against these roles and the bias against the gender. We don't have gender equality. And somewhere I felt that this is an opportunity for me to at least do my bit and do my part. How do you give back to the community? How do you give back to the gender imbalance? Especially gender is one thing that I've always seen. And that's the reason why I've also been mentoring a lot of women over my career. Uh, Therefore, helping people to see. So there are people, and I know there are people who graduated as chemical engineers, but they wanted to get into marketing or sales. And I'm like, but you're a chemical engineer, you could run a plant, you could run a refinery. And does that not excite you? And yes, it excites me, but there's no one else that I can look up to. I don't see role models and so on. So one of the things that we focused on was creating the right set of role models, helping people, especially women, to go through their cycles of growth in an organization. So how do you find the right talent? How do you retain the right talent by providing them growth opportunities, being very intentional about it? So what is the affirmative action? So there's a lot of affirmative action, like it's like swinging the pendulum from one end to another. Right? So you release the pendulum on one side. If you want that balance, it has to swing to the other side first before it can come to settle in the middle. So for centuries and decades of imbalance in the gender, for example, or equity or equality, if you were to call any one of these pieces, the pendulum is not in the center. It is somewhere which is on the swing path. And therefore, how do you as a leader ensure that you allow that space for the pendulum to swing so that it can come to a neutral resting place? And for me, having seen people like, I remember my time when I was in Unilever and I was running a factory in Goa, and there was a union leader. She was a lady. And my first interaction, I was like, you sound so intelligent and you have so much to contribute, but why are you spending a lot of time in things that might not be the most efficient utilization of your time? Um, And she said, okay, I'll come back to you and talk to you. And she came back and then she talked about her story and why she was in the union. And she said, I didn't want to be there, but there had to be female representation. So I got nominated. Now I spend a lot of time in those things. I said, do what you have to do as part of the union office committee, but spend time on things that can develop. Today, she is a very senior manager in Unilever. And she spent time, she moved roles, we moved her to quality, and from quality, she went into manufacturing. And for me, just that example of that one person who could move from being a worker to a very senior manager in the company, the same company, and it's been now 20 years plus now, is inspiring to say, look, I could help one person change the trajectory of their life. And that is so meaningful. When I look at my own family, my mother has been a role model for me in many ways. She was a teacher, she was the wife of a military officer, moved around every 6 months, 1 year, but she still found a way to give back. And when I see, oh, she did this training, she did this coaching, she taught people how to do crochet, she taught people how to build sweaters, how to do cane weaving. And I'm like, yeah, okay, where did she learn all this? So for me, it's like, okay, there is a lot that can happen in this space if we allow equal opportunities for people who are underrepresented, whether it is women or whether there are other gender, other cohorts like people with disabilities or transgenders or attack victims. There are people who are marginalized, and how do you bring them into the mainstream? And that's giving me a lot of joy. Nasira has given me a lot of peace and satisfaction. And I mean, we are not even scratching the surface. I mean, it's an iota of the iota that we can make an impact. But if there are thousands and millions of us who do this, then we will certainly make larger impact. Because it's been very fulfilling for me, and I think that's the reason why I just continue to do it.
I have to tell you that your eyes just sparkled a little bit when you said that.
You are a trained coach, so you can observe what's happening with me.
No,
uh,
seriously.
Very
I'm gonna put
fulfilling.
it in one of the shots and add one twinkle over there, then Akhil will know. But
Very
I'm
fulfilling.
sure this path was um without challenges, with challenges. How did you overcome? What were the challenges that you faced, to be who you are today, as authentic as you are?
I think for me, the challenges have been more in my own head to say, what can I do? What can I not do? And that reflection, that piece of like saying, why can't you? Like I moved from a very successful field career to, uh, I spent 15 years in the field, like running factories, building factories, and so on. And then I said, I want to do a corporate role. And I start raise my hand for a corporate role. And the first 1 year of my corporate role, I didn't enjoy it. And just because I realized that, look, um, I hadn't changed my mental models. I still continue to think differently, and my expectation of my peers and my colleagues and people who were my stakeholders was very different. And they were like, "No, we need game-changing things from you now that you are in this leadership position, and you are still giving us incremental improvements and all." So I realized that look, some of the things that I hadn't done too well was change my perspective. The narrative still remained the same for me, when even though I shifted my roles and the role became very different, but I continue to think differently, or continue to think the same way, not change it. And it was a bit of a aha moment, which was like, oh, Akhil, you haven't really shifted. You should be looking at it very differently. So I've gone through my set of turbulent times in my career where there was moments of doubt. This was the time when I moved from a very successful field to a corporate role, which I did enjoy. I went into a shell. I went back to my manager, talked to him. He was kind enough to give me some time, some guidance, some advice. And when I did that, I realized that, look, I have to transform something that I was not thinking correctly. I did that flip in my head. I got the team to start looking at what was going on. And for the next 3 years, we were opening batsman number one. I mean, you would open every meeting with saying Akhil and his team is going to present, because the agenda became so more meaningful and so more connected with what people were looking for. Right. So I think not being in sync with the needs of other people and being continuing to think the very unidirectionally, I think has been one of my biggest learnings in this whole piece there. The other piece is also challenging the norm. I mean, when we were building Amazon in India, a lot of it was there is a mothership in the US, they build technology, take it and lift it and bring it to India and use it. And I'm like, I don't know how to do it, because in India, a lot of it was cash on delivery. US is all prepaid credit cards. Therefore, you have to build solutions and you have to go and influence people. And they were like, oh, you are from India. How big is the business in India? So it's very small. oh yeah, we have some engineers, but they are focused on very large projects which have billions of dollars of saving. Your project will only give us like some small thing. And I'm like, I have to influence these people to do what is right for us and build the right solutions and so on. So you would sometimes feel very frustrated. Sometimes you would feel like you're hitting your head against the wall. But then that is what grit and resilience is all about, to say continue on the path and be very consistent in what you want to deliver. Be flexible in the approach, but be consistent in the outcome that you are looking for. So I think that piece has been very important for me to say, be flexible on the approach. If this approach is not working, change it, go to another approach, try something else, but be very focused on what you really want as an outcome.
Yeah.
So I've had
Yeah.
my shares of ups and downs in my career, in my performance, in my output, in my delivery. But when I look back to say, look, no life is perfect, and every opportunity that we have, if we just use it as a learning opportunity, every day we become better versions of ourselves.
Wow. And I know supply chain management just at even a local level is like so much of firefighting, and you've gone and done this at like a global level. So really, that must really call for a lot of resilience, patience, um, you know, innovation, collaboration. You have it all. So really, so much power to you, Akhil, for everything that you do. I uh, I am curious to know what advice would you give emerging leaders who feel that they need to have it all together, before they can effectively lead? Because sometimes taking decisions and portraying themselves as being the leader, there's so much of pressure for some people when you say that. So how do they? What would be your advice to them, in embracing uncertainty and learning how to collaboratively lead, for greater success?
Yeah, this is my personal thing, so I'll share you my personal view on this one. I think it's a myth that effective leadership is about having all the answers or being perfect or being flawless. In another way to say this, leadership is more than this, and leadership is more about guiding others through periods of uncertainty, ambiguity, helping them overcome their challenges. And it's not about possessing perfect skills or perfect knowledge, right? So when you say, I
Yeah.
want to be perfect, I want to be like, I know it all or have it all together, I feel it's a bit of a myth, and our attention and focus is wrongly placed, because then the attention is on I. I have to be perfect. I have to be right. I have to be right all the time. I have to be this role model that everybody is worshiping. It's the focus is on you. But the moment you shift it and say, it's okay not to know things. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to trust others. It's okay for them to know more than you. Then it's no longer about you. And then it's about like, how do I help other people? So the narrative shifts from me to you, and therefore that becomes much more empowering. In fact, I've seen that when you try to come across as somebody who's infallible, somebody who can't fail, somebody who can't make a mistake, it adds stress. You don't remain authentic. Other people start seeing you as like, oh, I don't know how he does it, but there's no connection because they don't see themselves in this person. They know of themselves as somebody who was making a mistake, but they see this other person as picture perfect, and therefore they can't relate to this person. And that breeds inauthenticity, missed opportunities for me as a learner if I just continue to pretend. So for leaders, I would say it's a bit of a myth. I personally believe it's of a myth saying you need to have it all together. Every single leader is learning. Some of the biggest leaders in the world have had coaches who have helped them to find their blind spots and help them to overcome their own limiting beliefs. Every single great business leader that you can name today has had a coach or has had a mentor who's helped them overcome things. So I would not spend too much time in thinking about like, oh, I need to have it all together. Leadership is a journey of continuous growth, right? And demonstrating how you can be open to learning from your team, people around you. You will adapt, you will get new information. How do you adapt to that new information? How can you be honest about the challenges that are there? That will allow you to foster stronger connections, and it will also help you to build trust. Like, I think I've narrated this story many times to many people. If ever I write a book, I will also name it as Riding the Tiger, about how I single-handedly messed up one of the largest Diwali seasons for Amazon in the country. And I talked about it very openly with my team to say, I take the responsibility and I messed up. And I messed up. I learned a lot in the process, but what happened in this whole thing was I realized that look, I should have done things very differently, and I did not. So it was very okay for me to stand up and say, look, I should have led it differently. I should have done it differently. But the way my manager treated me and the way he conducted himself, and I was feeling miserable about how I was running the whole event and how was I making mistake after mistake, how he conducted himself gave me this whole space to say, look, he's still referring to me as my friend and he's still supportive of what I'm doing. He actually said, when I was messing up, he actually said two sentences. You are riding a tiger, my friend. Let's talk when it is over. Just two sentences, but very powerful. You are riding a tiger, so you have to go through this crucible learning opportunity. You can't jump off the tiger. If you jump off it, you are going to get devoured by the tiger. It'll eat you up. So you have to go through this crucible learning experience till the tiger tires out and then you can jump off. The second one is he used the word my friend, which still said that he still thinks I'm still part of his team. He has not disowned me. And then he said, let's talk when it is over, which means I will not get in your way at this moment. I'll step away. You do what you have to do, and we'll talk about it. And that gave me so much of confidence to say, okay, let me handle this the way I was trying to do it. And next year, we had one of our most successful Diwalis in terms of customer experience, just because I had a safe space to be bold, to do what I had to do the previous year, but do it with more thought and more thinking through. And that allows us to just be very different leaders. See how my manager conducted himself. Now I think of myself and say, oh God, I think I was a pretty much like I didn't conduct myself many times. If I take this as a role modeling example, then I felt I was lacking there. But there's no point in beating yourself about what you did not do. But what is important is what can we do about this now that we know this learning and that we have this awareness and growth for us.
Seeing a lot of things over here, when you tell me about, your humility, the authenticity that you pull out every single time in every situation. It takes a very big person to actually say, yes, I did it. It's because of me. I'm sure that changed everything. I'm sure that was the beginning point, like, that just changed everything. And then when you talk about, leadership, and you take these bold steps and these bold decisions, you know, along with this very balanced uh, space of, uh, you know, being being so collaborative and comforting, and it is you are really an entire package as a leader. And I have to say many congratulations to you for shaping your energy in terms of your personal energy, what walks in with you when you walk into a room, really designing your leadership, really shaping it in such an authentic manner. And it's not really about just decisions and strategy, but also all the work that you do, with yourself, this inner work that you have done with yourself, that you put out, and that really not just empowers everybody who comes in contact with you. So I really have to say many congratulations to you on that.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Nasira. I think I've been very blessed to have the mentorship and the support of people around me throughout my career, throughout my life, personal and professional both. And I can't just be even any more grateful. I mean, I'm full of gratitude for what I've received from people. And it's allowed me to be who I am. I know there are many dimensions of becoming better versions. And I think that journey is continuous. But I've been very fortunate and blessed to have people's support. So credit goes to them.
Thank you so much, Akhil, and thank you so much for taking the time and speaking to me. I'm really glad that we could do this, and I am sure that it's going to inspire so many people to really get unstuck, so many leaders to understand uh, intricately uh, about themselves, and maybe if they can take some of the suggestions that you've just put out, I think I have done my job, like, putting you here, inviting you here and changing someone's vision of how leadership should look like. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Saxena. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akhil. Atma Namaste.
Thank
That's
you.
me, the Energy Architect, signing off. Thank you, everyone.